Hello and welcome. My name is Lexi Jong, and here I like to talk about luxury beauty. Today we are going to be talking about the new Rouge La Palette Visage. So this is a really stunning face palette from the brand Rouge. We're going to talk about this. We'll go through some swatches, a couple of demos, and so forth. We're also going to be going over the new Sydney Grace brushes. So let's go ahead and get started. So La Palette Visage, the face palette from Rouge or Le Fillon Rouge, is a really stunning palette. If you're not familiar with the brand Rouge, it is the brand of Jeanne Dimas. I know my French pronunciation is not the best, but she is a French model. She has like a clothing line. She's got a huge YouTube channel and all sorts of stuff. So anyway, she created the brand Rouge originally for clothing, and she branched out into makeup a few years ago. I have yet to try things, but this was my first purchase. And some of her items, you can actually find them available at places like Violet Grey. So, you can buy them there. I purchased mine from the Rouge website directly. You can see we've got 3 creamy highlighters and 3 blushes here. Let me just smudge these out a little bit here so you can kind of see the color. And these products are all very, very lightweight, very thin in consistency. The blushes and the highlighters, they feel a little balmy going on, but they're not going to have that balmy, wet texture on your cheeks. They really do sort of sink in. So there's no tackiness or anything. So they definitely sink in. One thing to know with many cream blushes, you'll notice that, if you keep blending with your finger, you can kind of blend away. Oh, I got that one messed up. Sorry. But yeah, you can kind of blend away the color. That's going to be true with these as well. You can see we've got 3 gorgeous highlighters and 3 gorgeous blush shades. So let's take a look at the demos and I'll talk a little bit more about these. La Palette Visage from Rouge. You can see that it has a stunning tortoiseshell looking package. It is substantial. It's plastic, but it's like a heavyweight plastic. There is a click closure for this. It has an 18-month shelf life and it's made in Italy. Now we have 3 1-gram blushes here for 0.03 ounces, and there are also 3 3-gram or 0.1 ounce highlighters. Now texturally, these all feel very smooth. The highlighters have a more metallic finish. And you can see in the first couple of demos, I am wearing the highlighters on my eyes here. Now, because they do have a more metallic finish, they're not going to feel quite as smooth as the cream blushes, which have no glitter or shimmer or anything in them. They have a sheen from, like the shine from the wetness of the ingredients, but there is no actual shimmer particles or anything in there. Now the highlighters are really beautiful. You can see you have kind of this soft pink champagne, more of a medium tone golden champagne, and then we have this soft bronze. For the blushes, we have mostly like a tea rose shade. Then there's this bright coral that leans more red, and a really beautiful berry shade. And I have been wearing these several times now. I've worn them on my eyes, my cheeks, and my lips. And let me tell you, you might not be surprised by this, but the highlighters on the eyes, they will crease. I mean, it's a cream product. They're not necessarily meant for use on the eyes. However, I believe that the ingredients are most likely eye safe. I have not looked into that, but they are recommended for use on the inner corner of the eye. So, I felt comfortable wearing them all over my lid as well. And it is a thin formula, very lightweight. So if you see a little creasing, you're wearing it on your eyes, this is the type that you can easily just kind of respread, just tap it out with your finger and it looks good again. Now it is going to have an emollient texture when you pile it up that thickly on your lid versus when I use it as a highlighter on my cheeks. I used a little bit more on my eyes. So one thing to note, when I put it with the Victoria Beckham eye kaajal, it did prevent the eye kaajal from fully setting. So if I went and touched my eye, it would smear both the Victoria Beckham and the highlighter. But if I left it alone, everything kind of stayed put. I did, again, have creasing with and without a primer on the eyes. I did not try the blush shades on the eyes. As for wear on the face, the highlighter really seemed to last all day on the face. I noticed it, I didn't really notice any decrease in intensity of the highlight. I think it looked beautiful from start to finish. It didn't really seem to migrate. I didn't use a ton of product with the highlight. So I think, if you pile it on, you'll probably have movement like I did on the eyes, or if you have very oily skin, that might be an issue as well. Now, as for the blushes, I did notice that there was fading by the end of the day. It was still present. I could still see the color, but it was definitely less intense than it was upon application. In the last demo, I'm actually using the two deepest shades underneath foundation, and I will put a wear update right here so that you can see how those performed over the day. But I wanted to see whether or not those deeper shades would still work for me if I use them underneath. And I already knew that the highlight did not look good on my skin on top of makeup. So I definitely wanted to try it out. And I can see, it's giving me a much more subtle look, but I can still see the color coming through the foundation. I think it looks really nice. So I really like the actual color of this. I feel like all 6 shades here are definitely usable for me. Now, as for wearing the blushes on the lips, did not try the highlighters on the lips, but the blushes on the lips do perform nicely. They give you some color. These are not going to be long wearing. I find them to be, they're a little dry. I like to have something on my lips. So if you don't want to have anything on your lips, that might not bother you. It's not like they're drying, but I like to feel something there. So I typically would coat these with some lip gloss or lip balm on top just for a comfort factor. Otherwise, it feels more just like a stain, and they look really beautiful, but they are only gonna last a few hours before you wanna reapply them unless you are topping them with something else. Overall, I would have to say that this is a really great palette for cream products. If you're looking for a palette for your face, something easy to travel with, this is a Tom Ford palette. You can see that they're about the same size. The La Palette Visage is slightly thinner. It's also just ever so slightly taller than the Tom Ford, but they're pretty comparable in size. And I feel like this is a really good size to travel with. It's something really easy to throw in your purse if you're looking for something for like touch-ups and stuff throughout the day. And it's just a really pretty packaging as well. So if you want to leave it out and display it, it definitely works well for that as well. It does not come with any applicators. I have found, using fingers or brushes works with this. If you're using a brush with a highlighter, even a more dense brush, I feel like you're going to get a lighter application. So definitely be sure, you use whatever tool is appropriate for the look you're trying to achieve. For the blushes, they definitely go on pretty intensely, and you're going to want to kind of shear them out most likely. And either a brush or your fingers works well for that. Just be careful of over blending. And overall, I would have to say that I would recommend this palette. I think it's a really beautiful palette and it performs very well. So let's talk about the Sydney Grace brushes. Now, I picked up her entire collection of brushes. So there's a face set and an eye set. None of these are labeled, so there's no like individual brush names or numbers or anything like that. You have this like tapered, looks like a walnut wood handle. Anytime I see this kind of taper, it always reminds me of like parting my hair and so forth, with the like a comb and stuff. And then you have this rose gold ferrule here. These are synthetic brushes. They are very soft, and I think they actually perform really well. So the Sydney Grace brushes, they're very reasonably priced. I think they are a great set of synthetic brushes if those are something you're looking for. I'm just going to briefly show you all of these, and then we'll continue talking while we go through demos. So these are the brushes that I use on the face. Got an angle brush. This is great for highlight. This one here, is reminiscent. These two actually remind me of a couple Sonia G's. Specifically these two here. This is the classic base and the mini base. So let me just pull those out here. So here's the classic base. You can see size-wise, they're similar. This Sydney Grace is going to be a little bit larger. And, you know, this has a mix of synthetic and natural hairs. So the actual like flex of the bristles is a little bit different. You can see the Sydney Grace is a little bit stiffer. And then here is the mini base and the Sydney Grace. The mini base is going to be a little bit larger. So I just wanted to share those with you guys so you could kind of see some comparisons. Then we have these other ones that I like to use for the face as well. They all perform really well. Notice the powder brush has a taper. Now, as for the eye brushes, you know, you kind of have like every shape you could need. This I actually use for lips, but I've also used it for lining the eyes. And I'm not going to demo every brush here today in this video, but if you have been watching my last few videos, you'll see I have used all of these brushes in videos at one point. So you've got a couple crease brushes here, and you notice that, you know, this one's a little bit dense. So it's really great for kind of buffing out cream products. This one has some density to it also. It's going to be smaller in size. It has a little bit more flexibility than its larger sister here. And then we have these brushes. So these two I like to use for eyeliner. This one here I use for lips, also laying down like shimmer particles. And I also like to use this for liner. Notice this one is rounded. So it works really well for the lips as well. Compared to the other one, you can see the size difference there. So those are great. And this I really like to use for cream shadows personally, to kind of buff those in. It's going to give you a softer application than a finger, but it really works well with cream shadows. Also works well with powders, but I particularly care for it with creams. This angled eye brush, I love this. I've been using this one a ton. It's got the right angle here. I like this one more for powders. You can also use this for like highlight or something, dusting powder under the eyes, things like that. And this large crease brush, by the way, I also like to use for concealer. And then this one here is kind of like the the soft definer from Sonia G. So you can see that they're going to be similar in shape and size. The Sonia G has a bit more of a taper. This is rounded. And you know, look at the flexibility. They're going to be similar, but the Sonia G is a little bit softer. There's going to be a little bit of a slower return to the original position than the Sydney Grace, which because of the synthetic fiber has a little bit more snapback. This works great for cream shadows too, if you want like a deep color in one area, so for detail work. But I personally love this for smudging shadows under the eye and for the inner corner. So let's go ahead and look at the demos here, and I'll tell you a little bit more about these. So we're starting off with the Rouge palette. I'm putting the two deepest shades on underneath my foundation in this demo, and I'm using the brush that I compared to the mini base from Sonia G. Now, because of the synthetic bristles and the length of these bristles, that's going to give them a little bit more flex and give, which makes it a little bit harder to pick up a lot of product from the pan for a cream product. So what I like to do with this is I like to pinch the bristles, which gives it a little bit more firmness, a little increased density or perceived density. And then I can pick up the product and I can either continue pinching them if I want to put it on in, you know, a more specific location and then buff it out. Or if I let go of the bristles, I can get kind of that softer application. So I really find this brush to be really useful. This size, you know, if you like a larger concealer brush, this also works for that. I actually found though that I prefer the larger crease style brush over this for concealer. Now for foundation, I have to say I've been loving this Sydney Grace brush. Again, it's very similar to the classic base from Sonia G, which is another one of my favorites. This is a little bit larger, so I find that it is great for foundation. The Sonia G being slightly smaller, I tend to use it more for blush and other cheek products over foundation. But the Sydney Grace is a little bit too large for me for blush, unless I'm using a lighter color. A lot of times when I am using cream products, I will use my foundation and then I will put the brush on, or the blush on with the same brush. And this works fine for that. I have done that in several videos. So really like this brush. I think it is great. And then for dusting the powder, it's a really nice standard powder brush. It does have a taper, which allows you to get underneath the eye. You can get like around the nose easily and so forth. But it is going to, you know, the bristles move, but it's not going to be one of those super airy brushes. So you're putting the powder on, you're dusting it on, you can get a light dust, but notice that the bristles pretty much stay together in that same grouping. They're not going to disperse greatly. So it's not going to be a super airy brush. And as for bronzer, I'm using the angled brush here. I really like this brush for bronzer and powder blushes. I think it is really nice. Now I have to say all of these brushes I have really enjoyed using. I think they are really great synthetic alternatives. Sydney Grace has come up with some great shapes here. Are these shapes unique and innovative? No, you're going to find these in other brushes. So, if you probably already have these shapes, but if you are looking for either a starter set or you are looking for a nice set of synthetic brushes. Like I personally like to travel with my synthetic brushes more. I don't worry about them, getting damaged or having to deal with any like humidity changes or anything like that. So I think these brushes are fantastic for that. And I actually would not hesitate to buy these again. So I think those are really great. Now, as for the other brushes for the eyes, as I mentioned, I really like that domed dense brush for cream shadow. I'm using that with the Phytosurgence Magnetic Maple. Again, this is one of my favorite products. By the way, I forgot to mention the other products that I used. So I used the Rouge palette for highlight and blush. I used the Sisley cushion in 00C Swan for foundation. And I skipped concealer today. For powder, I used the Cocondo brightening powder in the brightening beige shade. And for bronzer, I used the Viseart Bronze Noir. And really liking all of those so far. Now for eyes, I'm using this domed brush that I mentioned I really, really like. I'm using this with the Phytosurgence Cream Shadow in Magnetic Maple. This is one of my staples. I really want to show you how the cream products and the powder products work with these brushes. So we're gonna put on a coating of the cream eyeshadow. You can see it goes on nicely. If I were to use my fingers, I would definitely get more color from it and a little bit faster, but I really love the way this also softly blends it into the crease. And then for powder shadow, I'm putting the Chantecaille Giraffe Quad on top. We're going in with this sparkly purple using that angled brush. I really like this angled brush because it's kind of got a curved angle, and I find that really useful with the eye shape. So putting this on, you can see that having the cream underneath really makes the purple pop a bit more. And you can see, because it's like kind of purple with a little bit of taupe in it. It's really beautiful, but it pairs beautifully with Magnetic Maple. And then I'm using the smaller brush that I like for the one that's like the soft definer. I use this in the white shade for the inner corner, a little bit underneath, but I did use one of the liner brushes for eyeliner, and I used the Bobbi Brown cream shadow stick in Forest for the liner. I'm really loving these for eyeliner because they stay put all day and they're really easy to use, but they're not harsh. So yeah, I have to say all of these performed really, really well. I have to say I really like them. And then I did use the smaller brush that I like to use as a lip brush, the one I mentioned, on my lips with the Rouge palette. So you could see how that performs, and it works really well for this. The larger version of this brush does as well. It just depends, what you're looking for. Since I was working with a deeper shade, I definitely wanted to go with something a little bit smaller. And you can see compared to the larger version of this brush, and this has a little bit more of a curve. So it's a little bit easier to get precision versus with the larger brush. So overall though, I would have to say that all of the Sydney Grace brushes are a great buy. I think they're very well made and they perform very well. So just to sum up, this Rouge palette I think is a really great cream face palette. So if that's something you're in the market for, it's really nice. Now, so just to sum up, I think this Rouge La Palette Visage. It's gorgeous. You've got these beautiful colors. You can get a really light, easy, everyday makeup look in under 5 minutes. You don't even have to use foundation stuff if you don't want to, but you can also use this for a little bit more done up kind of look like I did today, and I think it works really well. I think these colors and the actual texture of these products is really well done. So I really like this palette. As for the Sydney Grace brushes, I think these are really great synthetic alternatives to some of my favorite brushes. So I think they are well priced. I like the handles. I love having thinner handles because I can fit more in a container. I think the taper here, I'm not sure how this will hold up over time, because if you are putting it in a cup, a lot of people do line their like cups or organizers with felt, which will help protect these tips. But if you don't, you might end up seeing like chipping or something over time with these pointed handles here. But I do like them aesthetically. One thing that I wish they had done is put like numbers or something on these brushes. It might not be something necessary for everyone, but being somebody who records, it would be nice to be able to say, oh, I'm using brush number, blah, blah, blah. And I also think that if they decide to introduce more brushes in the future, it's just helpful to make sure that you don't already have that one in a previous set, depending on where they're going with these brush lines. So overall, though, I think these are a really great buy. I would recommend these if you're looking for synthetic brushes. Now, I just wanted to give you a quick comparison of some other synthetic brush lines. The Linda Hallberg, I feel like these perform well, but they aren't that soft. The Sydney Grace are definitely softer. Now, the Esom V series is another favorite synthetic series of mine. I really love these. And compared to the Sydney Grace, the fibers of the Sydney Grace do feel a little bit smoother and softer than the V series. But that also makes for a difference in pickup. It's really more like the cuticle of this kind of feels just smoother, whereas this has a little bit more, just a little bit more roughness to it, which I find that this allows for pickup of certain types of products a little bit more easy, like the cream products compared to the Sonia G. So something like this is going to be great for dusting on powder and so forth, but it really depends what purpose you're going for. So I have to say the V series though is really great. Now the Katie Jane Hughes and Spectrum collection, these feel soft, but it's different. The Sydney Grace, they feel soft. You can tell they're synthetic, but they definitely feel like a newer version of a synthetic brush, whereas these feel more like your traditional synthetic brush to me. So they're smooth, but I personally, these work really well with liquids and creams. I don't find them as functional with powder products, whereas the Sydney Grace I feel like are more versatile. The Chantecaille only have a couple of their synthetic brushes, but I find that they are good for certain purposes as well. Softness is pretty comparable to the Sydney Grace, but the actual individual hairs feel thinner or finer on the Sydney Grace brushes than the Chantecaille, which do feel a little bit thicker in diameter. And the Byredo, these were created specifically for use with Byredo products. I mean, obviously they work with other things as well, but I do think, you can't truly compare them because the shapes and the designs of these are specific for what they're using them for. But I would say the Sydney Grace are still slightly softer, but not super noticeable. And yeah, overall, yeah, maybe the Byredo might be slightly thicker in diameter also, but they're pretty close. Really, I think the biggest difference with these is going to be the shapes and sizes of the Byredo brushes, but I do feel like the fibers are fairly similar. The Byredo have slightly more grip. And of course, in comparison with the Sonia G, this is her Fusion series, which has a mix of undyed goat hair as well as 2 different types of synthetic fibers. I personally feel like this is like the ideal blend for function and performance. The Sydney Grace doesn't quite, meet up to the Sonia G Fusion series, but, again, this is not 100% synthetic either. So it's really hard to isolate the synthetic hairs in here to compare them with this. But I do think that if you're looking for a fully synthetic version, the Sydney Grace series has some really great options in there. And last up, for the Westman Atelier brushes, these also have a little bit more of a kink in the fiber. They're not quite as smooth as the Sydney Grace. So, you know, just slight differences. Both seem very well made. It really depends what you are looking for and, you know, what your desired outcome is, you know, performance of the products and so forth. Overall, though, I'd have to say that they are a great purchase. So I hope this was helpful, and I would love to know if you've tried any of these products, what your thoughts are. So please let me know down below in the comments, and I hope you have a wonderful day.